Sure.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us here. So, we are going to be taking a brief interview on our course, the IT Strategy, Design and Implementation. And the primary purpose of this interview would be to understand how organizations structure their IT strategy and how they go about implementing and executing it. So, thank you, sir, for joining us. Uh, Firstly, I would like to understand that what the current IT strategy is at risk.
Yeah. See, I think one fundamental thing about strategy, whether it is IT strategy or marketing strategy or any other strategy, organizational strategy or finance strategy, it all has to dovetail with the goals of the organization. I think that is the fundamental thing in terms of the goals of the organization being the starting point. And for example, we expand our goals even further. We start being railways, it's a critical infrastructure. We, in fact, start with the goals of the country. Our goals of the country starting from going from the existing GDP growth to go to 5 trillion US dollars by 2030, and then within that there are a number of sectors which need to perform in the economy, around 40 plus of them, and railways is one amongst them. So the goals of the railway are pretty clear in terms of what is set out in the national perspective. And just articulating a bit further on that, goals of the railway are like the freight market share should go up from 22 to 40% by 2040, and to take the rate of current construction from 14 kilometers per day to 35 kilometers per day, and the accidents should become zero. The non-fare revenue should be at least 10% of a total revenue. Uh, these are some of the goals, which have been set out for the railway very clearly. And for getting these goals to be delivered, railway organizes itself in different functions like marketing and operation, marketing, business development, operations, asset management. Then you have your project management, finance, HR, procurement, and so on. So any IT strategy which is not dovetailing into the functions and the overall goal of the railway is no strategy at all. So our IT functions, we actually look at how do we support on a day-to-day basis not only the individual functions of marketing and business development, operational efficiency, in terms of how do you get project management, how do you get assist management into play, finance, HR, procurement. So all IT applications which are in these functions have to dovetail into the overall objective of the company and its different functions. So the point I would like to state is IT strategy keeps on evolving as the functions of the railway keep on evolving over the period, and the applications which serve these functions for delivering upon the goals of the railway need to also evolve over the period, which has railway has been doing very consistently. I'll just give an example of, say, the passenger reservation system. Here, the ticketing system, originally when it started in somewhere in 1989, it was in a disconnected mode. Then came a connected mode where you can book a ticket from anywhere to anywhere. Then web ticketing came. Then mobile ticketing is now the norm, where we issue almost 25,000 tickets per minute. So it's like you evolve along with the environment, you evolve along with the organizational goals and strategy. The same has been the case in all other functions, whether it's asset management or core operations. Evolution over a period of time, dovetailing into the overall strategy of the company and delivering the value is what IT is all about. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for that answer. That really sets the tone on what IT strategy is. Now, while I was hearing you talking, you were mentioning about how business goals are very important to actually designing the IT strategy. Now, the second part of would be how to measure that we are making progress towards those business goals. So, how do we measure the success of any IT strategy? Are there any key performance indicators or any key resource areas that you use in particular?
See, I think one thing I'm a strong believer in the sense like any IT, there is a cliched argument that it doesn't necessarily generate the return straight away. Okay, but there is something called an organizational return on capital employed, ROCE, which itself is a factor of multiplicative factor of different things. Like return on capital employed can be thought of as multiplying factors of asset turnover into the net profit margin into the leverage ratios. And when you take
Correct.
each one of these components and take the numerator and denominator, how your IT improves upon each one of them. And finally, if you can dovetail into that return on capital employed, that is how you need to measure. For example, I just told you that return of capital can be bifurcated into return over assets over sales, and sales over the capital. So basically, return anything which goes into improving the returns in terms of profitability, operational efficiency. How does your IT application cater to that requirement? Anything which goes into sales over revenue over sales, like asset turnover. When you use your locomotives in the railway parlance, effective utilization improves asset turnover. So basically, every IT application which improves the operational efficiency gets into that factor. So it depends that very carefully the CIO or maybe the CTO, whoever is in charge of the technology and CIO, cannot be looking away from what goes on in the mind of the CEO. The CEO will be looking at return on capital employed, and unless you prove that your IT application or whatever you're following in the short term or the long term gets into each one of these factors, and I don't think you'll be able to actually convince people of the utility of having a particular strategy which may be quite appealing upfront, but probably doesn't actually dovetail into what the CEO's goes on in CEO's mind. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for that answer. So it's very interesting to hear you talk about how IT and the business goals must align with each other. So now, if we'll talk about a little bit of the implementation part. So, what kind of roadmap or methodology would you follow for the design or implementation of your IT strategy?
See, that's so for an organization like CRIS, Center for Rail Information Systems, where I'm currently heading. It is the IT backbone for the Indian Railway. It started in 1986, and when it started initially, there were only two main applications. In fact, we were the first to start computerization in the country, and we started with the passenger ticketing system first, then the freight operations, and but in the last 2 decades, somewhere from 2006 onwards, almost every function of the railway, not only just the market, not only just the ticketing and the freight operations, all the operational applications, the asset management applications, both in fixed infrastructure, rolling infrastructure, as well as the core backbone of finance, HR, procurement. All these applications have been developed over the past 15 to 20 years. And so on, so much so to the extent that as we stand today, there is no function in the railway which is not getting into a backend database. So, that being the case, it's really fascinating that how do you look at strategy going forward? It's very um, clear to us that this evolution itself has both strengths and weaknesses, because the way we evolved, it was not actually thought of as some sort of an enterprise resource, enterprise architecture, where we just start with this and over a period of time build these building blocks. But we actually went into, I'll not say siloed is the wrong term to have to use. We different the applications are come at different time frames, and to that extent there has to be some integration with whatever has already been developed and whatever probably is going to come in future as well, that needs to be thought. So as we stand today, uh, we are undertaken a project called One ICT, with all these applications which have come over the years, and that our strategy has been to look at our IT from different perspectives. One is to identify those functions of the railway where there is no application at all. Second is, if there is an application, what are the inconsistencies within the same application? That is, we call it a process perspective. The third is something which is fundamental in terms of master data management, because many of these applications have come over a different period of time. The master data which is handled in many of these applications have need to talk to each other in a consistent manner. So this master data management, and how do you get this redundancies in the master data across different applications. And fourth is similar is on the transactional data, like how do you get accuracy into the transaction data being reported from two different applications. Two or more applications reporting on the same activity should report accurately. And for brownfield organizations like railways, the, even before computerization, railway operations, railway was functioning. So we have a robust statistical perspective, where whether one way to challenge is, with all these IT applications, are you able to generate all the statistics which have been generated over a period of time? Similarly, on the costing perspective, methods of costings were existing in the manual mode. Can you generate your costing mechanisms uh, using your IT applications? And last but not the least is, can you generate all your accounting statements, the P&L, the balance sheet, the cost, the CFS, the cash flow statements out of your IT applications? So these eight perspectives together, if they're addressed in a holistic manner, this is uh, there's some sort of a proprietary strategy we have evolved on our own about the different perspectives in which we look at IT applications to make a robust one ICT for Indian Railway.
It's really interesting to hear how CRIS is going forward in delivering value to Indian Railways. So would you say that you've seen any particular metrics changing? Have you seen, technology actually delivering value? If you could give us few examples of that, apart from what we heard about the ticketing systems and the freight management systems, are there any other examples?
Yeah, many. I mean, see, one fundamental thing is as technology evolves, IT needs to evolve. And I don't think there is any better example than railways, which evolves with technology. And many of you must have seen the printed card tickets and how we used to go to the counter. Now, almost 85% of our ticketing is on the electronic mode. Similarly, on the railway operations, similar to air traffic control, our railway also has something called section controls, which control the tra- traffic of trains across the various sections. And this used to be done manually, time and distance using a scale. Someone used to communicate with the station, and as a train passes through a particular station, he used to plot the train and chart its path in time and space. Now, automatically, because we have now put GPS trackers on all our locomotives, and with ISRO, we have a project which is going on for installing these real-time information devices, which every second, along with the lat long, they give the date and timestamps, which get into a backend data, and these are used for not only the controlling of the trains, but also for firing your national train inquiry systems and allied functions. That has been the case everywhere. The data acquisition is undergoing a fundamental transformation in terms of sensors coming in on a real time, which hitherto used to be on a manual mode. And it all depends on how we can adapt dynamically to this changing environment, and how do you get your applications up and running to the new challenges.
That's really fascinating to hear about that, sir. Uh, Now, when we talk about Indian Railways, the amount of passengers it generates on a regular basis would mean that you currently sit across a huge repository of data. So, you would need to maintain a kind of data strategy in order to deal with this data. So, could you go into what the key components of your data strategy are, and how would you ensure data quality and accessibility to all those passengers who depend on the information systems?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it has been the data strategy is pretty clear. I mean, earlier we used to have only two applications where manageability was not an issue, but now we have the entire gamut of applications for all functions of the railways. So the data strategy has been to first, as I mentioned in the earlier stage, to get your master data right. Master data about which fires not only the reservation systems but also the operations. When you talk about passengers, they require you to not only know the inquiry status of your reservation, they also would like to know where your train is. So Basically, you need to have consistent data across different applications. So we have cleaned up all our master data as far as passenger information is concerned using the master data management system, which is a tool which we use for getting a golden source of truth into one master, and then try to fire from that master all other applications using this master data management. And the data strategy has a lot of other parameters too. One is the master data, second is the transactional data, and how do you ensure the quality and integrity of the data. But one good thing, as I mentioned, is this manual data which was coming in is now being replaced through real-time sensors coming in at almost every activity. So that itself brings in a lot of robustness in terms of the data quality instead of depending upon a man to enter the data. And of course, we have a data policy in which any new uh, asset being inducted, there is a data policy in terms of who has the access rights for putting a particular field into the system, who has the particular right to edit, who has the particular right to modify, so on and so forth. So all these access rights have been built, and there is a consistent data strategy in place.
So you talked about removal of manual data into real-time systems. So is this a result of your digital strategy? And if so, could you describe what the digital strategy is and how you went about achieving this digital transformation?
See, railway is technology driven. I mean, if you look at whether it's track or signaling or the traction systems which run your uh, locomotives and trains, or whether it is your signaling system, or whether it is your coaches, locomotives, or your wagons, there has been a consistent upgrade in the technology over the years, and it continues to evolve. No, so as it continues to evolve, each of them have come. For example, signaling has gone from uh, I don't know. You people may not have ever seen that upper quadrant, lower quadrant signaling arms. Now we're gone into multiple aspect color light signaling, which has come with solid state interlocking. And now we're using data loggers, wherein as the train passes through a station, the lat long date time comes into a database. I mean, so the evolution of the technology has been, and we leverage on these technologies to ensure that our applications and the data which gets into the applications are made more and more robust with the evolution of technology. And we have something called now as we speak, there is we are putting 3.5 lakh of our freight cars would be fitted with GPS trackers. I mean, so this gives you almost absolute information about where the wagon is. And we are coming with a CCTV project for putting CCTVs in locomotives and coaches, which gives more accuracy, more visibility. And not only in the operations side, on the passenger amenities side, on the escalators, lifts, and also on even in our colonies for our employees, the pumps, the valves, the lighting, all these are coming with sensors. So basically improving the operational efficiency and improving customer satisfaction across our core customers of passengers and freight customers and our own employees, and of course our contractors, also suppliers, because now we have a system unlike many others organization where a contractor can upload his bill on the system, and his bill is actually passed at when we have every date and time stamp of where the bill is um, getting held up, and all this date time stamp for improving efficiency. So these are really exciting times for the entire IT sector. Railways in particular is on top of it. Yeah.
Really great to hear, sir. Uh, so now, when we talk about IT organizations and even IT strategy in general, cloud computing is a huge part of how organizations structure their IT strategy. So, what would you say is your approach to cloud computing within the IT strategy? Do you decide between, and how do you decide between private, public, or hybrid cloud solutions?
Yeah. See, I think some of the things are pretty clear in terms of what the government mandates. For example, railways, they're termed as a critical infrastructure, and the power sector, the railways, the defense. So there are certain guidelines we need to follow if you're trying to go in for cloud setup. But when you say cloud, I mean, cloud, irrespective of whether it is public, private, or hybrid. Uh, I mean, you can always have an in-premise cloud, and in terms of cloud, ultimately means that different applications are being hosted, and you use an optimal set of resources as much as you require, and the way in which you virtualize your CPUs, virtualize, and then have that monitoring system in place. Then even storage has already been virtualized many long time back. But how do you optimally use the existing resources against the 180 plus applications which we are currently running? So we had discrete systems. Now around 6 years back, we have gone in for a small in-premise cloud, which where we have migrated around 40 of our applications into this in-premise, and we also use public cloud for those where the workload is shoots up during a particular period of time. For example, our timetabling software, when we require to simulate it, it requires a lot of compute power. So these we actually take it onto the cloud. We are using a public cloud for that, and going forward, I think cloud, not only the public, private, now I think a lot of other variants have come which are pretty attractive in terms of a co-location cloud. I mean, you can have even a civil infrastructure, electrical infrastructure owned by some company, and you can put your own hardware there and manage your own systems, or you can make hardware as a service or platform as a service, software as a service. You can pick and choose from a various options. So the method we are following is it's not a uniform strategy. It is a strategy which is absolutely dovetailed to the requirements of the applications and in terms of the criticality. And we are on the journey, and we'll continue to evolve on that. For example, the BI tools, business intelligence tools, probably you need to have some sort of a hybrid, especially when you're going for utilization of GPUs, where probably it will take some time, you know. So essentially, that's a combination. It depends upon a mature application versus an application which has a lot of volatility in terms of the peaks which occur. We try to balance it.
That's really exciting to hear, sir, how you're leveraging cloud within the organization. Uh, So when you talked initially about the organization goals, there would be, I mean, every organization is subject to the legality and the rules of the nation that it operates in. So how would you say your IT governance is structured in order to achieve your business goals or in order to leverage your IT strategy?
See, I mean, railway cannot be outside the purview. You know, I mean, we are strictly governed by the Ministry of Electronics and telecommunication guidelines, which are given for the entire ICT governance of the country. So, but we have the governance is pretty robust in terms of the way we architect our entire hardware and the applications. You know, I mean, we have demilitarized zones and militarized zones for our hardware, and even for upgrades, we just don't get these upgrades and patches directly into the system. We first take them into the demilitarized zone, then you watch them. Then after that, you can take them into militarized zone. Even in the militarized zone, we first put them on the test into the test environment. Then we get them onto the development, and then after testing, we get it into the this one. We get it into the production environment. And visibility monitoring tools are of essence here, no, for robust governance of the system. We have almost around 13,000 cores, which we currently are distributed in our entire network, which is scattered in five regional data centers: Chennai, Mumbai, Calcutta, Delhi, and one more here in Chanakipuri, Delhi. So such a system can only function when you have robust visibility management and control tools, and we have adequate tools to govern, and of course the governance of the network, having a robust NOC. In fact, having a NOC raw COC is a cloud operation center and a SOC security operation center, and ultimately we'll be also having something called ROC, that is the Resilience Operations Center. So all the four in tandem will give you a robust governance. So We are in the journey of already having a knock. SOC is coming into place. We have just called for an RFP for that, and COC is already in place. And ultimately, we'll be building something called the Resilience Operations Center as well to get the governance systems absolutely on dot.
It's really interesting to hear how robust the governance processes around the railways are. Uh, so when we talk about organizations, there are budgets set apart for every IT project that is undertaken. So could you walk us through your IT budgeting process and how do you align the expenditures with different priorities, different projects, different buckets that every organization has?
See, I think railways, it's pretty clear. I mean, we are the IT backbone for the railway. So, Chris, as I mentioned, we have around 900 plus software engineers, all homegrown. We have recruited them to CDAC now through GATE, and they form the actual backbone for the Chris of having the continuity. Unlike, say, an organization coming in or a set of people coming in on a short-term contract and then leaving us, this entire seamless upgradation takes place because we have these 900 plus core software engineers who are managing the applications in these domains. And the budget is controlled by the Ministry of Railways. And we have a very interesting, what you can say, structure of governance, wherein while we have these 900 plus software engineers who are absolute core, and dozens of network engineers as well. We have the domain knowledge professionals for the railways, also embedded inside Chris. They come in the form of around 40 general managers in different sectors of operations, business, freight, then coming into your finance, HR, procurement, all the asset management are represented by these officers, and they get in the domain. And we have another interesting structure, which is where we actually they act as a bridge between the railway and the Chris, who is the developer of the software, called the nodal officers. So these people are the bridge, and they are the ones who actually are the bridge between the implementation on the field of the application and Chris, which actually develops the software. So this allocation takes place, and the orchestration of budget amongst all these applications is it takes place almost seamlessly, and we have adequate powers as within the organization as a managing director to orchestrate the funds depending on the requirement amongst the different applications.
Sir, how would you say that what I mean, what kind of risk management processes do you have in place to deal with the realities of today, such as cyber risks or information security risks? There are data leaks that can happen. There are systems are often prone to viruses, and gradually, as the automation is increasing across the railways, what kind of risk management processes are being followed to kind of counter such incidents?
Yeah, see, I mean, security is something which is of paramount importance, especially in the last couple of years, the way in which cyber threats have evolved. I mean, traditionally, most of the organizations, including railways, have been very, very strong in network security. We just don't allow anything which comes through the internet because we have a very robust interfaces using our firewalls, our intrusion prevention devices, which screen most of the threats which come in. Then thereafter, as I mentioned, no, we don't directly get into a militarized zone. We don't allow any traffic which is coming to the internet to come getting into a militarized zone straight. We get into a demilitarized zone where we have a proxy server, where proxy servers, load balancers, and these form the heart. But now we find that is itself is not enough. The entire spectrum of tools that will be required, right from the application to the hardware to the middleware to the network to the endpoints, all these need to be secured. So what we've done recently is to identify what are the tools we have in these sectors, in each segment, in terms of detecting a threat, reacting to a threat, responding and recovering back. So what are the tools we have in each of these entire spectrum from the application up to the endpoints. What are the tools that are required? We did a gap analysis, and based on the gap, we have actually identified what we need to procure. So that is what I was mentioning about an RFP which was issued recently for getting an IR SOC, Security Operations Center, in place. So we are at it, but by no means we can underestimate the threats.
Right, sir. So when I mean people operate, like you mentioned, there are around 900 homegrown software engineers working at Chris. So usually in organizations, what this leads to is that there is a lot of IT which employees use, but it is not authorized by the IT department. So, what are the challenges in dealing with this kind of shadow IT, and how do you manage, detect, and also, address this kind of shadow IT that people use software without the IT department's authorization?
See, I mean, I think you're trying to confuse between two things. One is we are an IT organization ourselves. You may be talking about the other part of the railways where they may be using unauthorized softwares, but inside our organization, which is totally into the development and maintenance environment, there cannot be any application which is developed on a non-standard or a non-unauthorized software. Okay, so essentially, applications when the project is sanctioned itself, it's very clear as to on what platform would we be developing it, and it shall be developed and only on that uh, particular platform. Yes, there could be some issues of delays and sometimes in terms of getting your uh, technical supports and all renewed in time when we probably have to extend that support and manage that critical period. But in Chris, we do not have any unauthorized software which is actually used for development of our applications. Zero.
Right, sir. Sir, what about the other functions that exist across the railways? Like, let's say there is the finance function, maybe there are the operational end of it.
Yeah.
What if they are using particular software which is not sanctioned by the IT department, but it is useful in their day-to-day process, and when they face any issues with it, they revert back to IT for assistance. So, in
Yeah.
that case, have you seen instances of this? And is this a real occurrence?
I think let's try to understand. No, application development is done by Chris, so no one can tamper with the application development software. Okay, so what comes out to the end of the application development pipeline is the data which can be used. The data can be downloaded, and then data can be used in Excel, and they can use it. The end users they can use. We give them a set of customized reports and business intelligence tools. But over and above that, everyone is free to download the report into whatever formats they want and make their own analysis. So whether at the endpoint they're using whatever softwares they want, I mean, it doesn't compromise on the application itself because they're totally insulated. And there we find people using their own proprietary applications, but this IR SOC, what we are saying is, which will all reach out to the endpoints. We have around 3 lakh endpoint devices in terms of the mobile tablets as well as in terms of the computers where the systems and the applications terminate. These endpoints will be able to detect any malicious softwares which will be used and take corrective action instantly. In fact, at these endpoints, we don't even want to allow them to use the pen drives, you know, for taking the data out.
Thank you for clarifying on that, sir. So I know it's getting pretty late, so I'd like to try to dive into the end part of those questions. So, what significant changes has your organization experienced? And we've dealt a little bit into that. And what are your learnings across this process, like implementing this strategy, looking at the execution? What are the learnings that you have seen across your term?
Number one is the buy-in from the top management. You know, I mean, from the railway board, the buy-in from the top management is critical. Then recognize that your software engineers are your core asset and keeping them in the zone of motivation always, and having a continual channel of communication in terms of explaining them as to why you're asking them to do what they are being asked to do, and getting the overall perspective. As I mentioned, the national goals, then the goals of the railways, then within the goals of the railways, why these applications have been developed, and what they're doing. How do you dovetail into this? I mean, that gives a lot of clarity and gets the buy-in from almost everyone. Then I think you will actually find there'll be no time overruns and cost overruns at all. You'll be developing quality products, and you will be developing them timely as well.
That's really insightful to hear about that, sir. The last part that I wanted to ask you is that what are your long-term plans for IT strategy, and in the context of future challenges or opportunities, how do you envision the future looking like, or what do you plan to do?
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned, that as we stand today, there is almost no function of the railway which is not digitized and getting into a backend database. So, to leveraging on this data, we require an enterprise data warehouse across all the applications, which we are in the process of stitching one together. Then, on top of that, we are already using BI tools and for an integrated management perspective from the CEO perspective. But we would be also using this enterprise data warehouse for using MLOps on top of this particular enterprise data warehouse to get into a higher end problem solving, like optimizations and other things which will be required. Hitherto, optimization the has been there always historically, right from 1970s. But now the time has come where you can actually solve many of these intractable problems using the compute power. So we need to actually leverage on them, and I think that is the crux in terms of how we can get this data which is being generated to use them for higher end analytics. And again, just to give a very insightful perspective into this, analytics of descriptive and diagnostic, I think they are equally important. I think very important, even more important. And while you continue to go on the journey of having predictive, prescriptive, and cognitive analytics, don't lose the sight of the power of what the business intelligence tools can give you in the descriptive and diagnostic, while you go in search of the holy grail of cognitive analytics, prescriptive to a certain extent, and predictive, which is the easier part of it using AML. Yeah.
It's great to hear you talk about that, sir. I've across my career, I've also worked a little bit on the enterprise data warehousing, so it's really exciting to see how Chris is going forward with analytics and data warehousing. Uh, I think we're done with the questionnaire, sir. Thank you so much for taking your
Yeah.
time out on a holiday, and I know it's pretty late in the night, so from the bottom of my heart,
Can I just ask what is this XIMB?
sir, XIMB is a management. It's an MBA college. So right now we have here just the business management program. So we are currently in the second year of our study across the MBA degree that we are aiming to get at.
Okay, great.
Right. So
Thank you.
it's
All the best to your career as well. Yeah.
thank you so much. So I'll be stopping the recording.